Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. President Barack Obama delivered his swan song State of the Union address. The president stayed away from specifics. Instead, he turned to broad themes, from fixing the political system to finding common ground with Republicans to fighting cancer and terrorism. However, Tuesday's speech was overshadowed by news earlier in the day that Iran had captured and detained 10 sailors in the Persian Gulf. During the hour-long speech, President Obama omitted any mention of the sailors. The Navy crew were taken prisoner after drifting into Iranian waters. The 9 men and 1 woman were released a day later. Their surrender and detainment was made public via a propaganda video, a violation of the Geneva Convention, and the female sailor was forced to wear a hijab. Secretary of State John Kerry and others in the Obama administration trumpeted the incident as a testament to the new diplomatic relationship between Washington and Tehran. More on this and the State of the Union in our next segment. From Istanbul to Indonesia, there were several terror attacks this week. On Tuesday, a suicide bomber struck in the heart of Istanbul's tourist district, killing 10 Germans. The attacker, who's believed to be ISIS-affiliated, had entered Turkey from Syria and was registered as a refugee. And in Pakistan, on Wednesday, a suicide attack on a polio vaccination center killed 15 people. Islamic militants have been targeting the country's vaccination campaign. Those killed on Wednesday were health workers and police escorts gathered to begin a 3-day immunization campaign. And on Thursday, multiple bombing attacks in Indonesia have left at least 2 dead and more than a dozen injured. Like the attack in Istanbul, Westerners appear to be the target. In Jakarta, a Starbucks was the focal point of the attack. Meanwhile, Ghana's Catholic bishops are criticizing its government for accepting 2 purportedly harmless former prisoners from Guantanamo Bay. In a statement released Monday, the bishops urged their government to, quote, act in the best interest of the nation by sending these men back to wherever they came from, end quote. According to U.S. and Ghana officials, the prisoners have been cleared of any terrorist act and are of no risk at all. If so, the bishops asked rhetorically, why were they not sent back to their own country or taken to the United States? Also this week, 10 more Gitmo prisoners have been released and sent to the Middle Eastern country of Oman. 2 high-profile U.S. cardinals weighed in on some hot-button political issues this week. Archbishop of Washington, Cardinal Dolan, says abortion will be a key issue in the upcoming presidential election. Wuerl told John Gizzi of Newsmax TV that legalized abortion in the U.S. has paved the way for the current culture of violence we're seeing, including guns and terrorism.
I think what we have done is create a mentality that so deprecates the value of life that all these other things follow very easily.
Meanwhile, in New York, Cardinal Archbishop Timothy Dolan called for Catholics to get more involved in the political process. He criticized the Democratic leadership in Washington for opposing school choice and conscience protection. Dolan also condemned legal abortion in the U.S. and added, quote, not only is abortion allowed, our tax money goes to subsidize it, and people and religious organizations are being coerced to pay for it, end quote. Pope Francis was again discussing the topic of global migration this week. In his annual address to diplomats accredited to the Holy See, the Pope called on European leaders to not turn their backs on refugees and migrants. This despite the cultural and security challenges associated with the arrival of 1 million people this year alone. In his speech, Pope Francis highlighted the inevitable problems such an influx creates as countries struggle to accommodate newcomers. Acknowledging the powerful anti-immigrant sentiments that have inflamed debates in Europe and North America, the pontiff went on to say, equally significant are fears about security, further exacerbated by the growing threat of international terrorism. And migration is sure to be a topic for Pope Francis when he visits Mexico next month. This week, the Holy See's ambassador to Mexico said the Pope's visit will not solve the country's many problems. Mexico continues to be plagued by drug violence, kidnappings, poverty, and its own migration crisis. The Pope is scheduled to celebrate his final Mass in the border city of Juarez. At the Mexico-U.S. border, he will speak directly to the sensitive topics of migration and pray for all migrants. And the Pope's first book, the first of his papacy, was released this week. The Name of God is Mercy. It's a 100-page question and answer conversation with Italian journalist Andrea Torinielli. In it, the Pope revisits several big themes of his pontificate, especially the merciful face that he believes is lacking in the Church. Torinielli and the publisher presented the Pope with the book on Monday. Well-worn recent topics of divorced and remarried Catholics and the judging of homosexuals were further explored. Referencing mercy, Pope Francis says that the Church needs to enter the darkness in which so many live and let them feel our closeness. But we must do so without being wrapped up or influenced by the darkness. He continues, caring for outcasts and sinners does not mean letting the wolves attack the flock. Instead, it means trying to reach everyone by sharing the experience of mercy. The Pope showed a little less mercy for those he labeled as scholars of law. He said that throughout the history of the Church, doctrinaire-minded rigorists have challenged Jesus' message of unconditional love and mercy for even the most wretched of sinners. Some are interpreting the book as an indication that the Pope will not make sweeping changes in the Church practice regarding divorced and remarried Catholics. We shall see. And big news this week for the Anglican Communion. The Episcopal Church in the United States appears to have been effectively suspended from full participation in the worldwide Anglican Communion. Church leaders met this week in Canterbury to reconcile deep differences on homosexuality and LGBT issues. The Anglican Communion of National Churches, which includes the Episcopal Church USA, have struggled to remain united since 2003, when the Episcopal Church consecrated an openly gay bishop, Eugene Robinson. Other Anglican members saw that decision and subsequent ones as departures from Scripture. On Thursday, a block of Anglican primates at the Canterbury meetings issued a statement saying the Episcopal Church will be barred from participating in major decisions in the Anglican Communion for 3 years. The Episcopal Church has lost more than 20% of its membership since the consecration of Eugene Robinson over a decade ago. We'll continue to monitor this very important story. Well, it is Oscar season. Nominees were announced this week, but unless you run an art house, you probably didn't see most of these films. Leading the pack for Best Picture with 12 nominations is the bleak frontier saga, The Revenant, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Extra points if you know what Revenant means. Among the other Best Picture nods, The Big Short, Bridge of Spies, Brooklyn, Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, Room, and Spotlight, the acclaimed drama, of course, about the Boston Globe reporters who broke the church sex abuse scandal. The big sentimental favorite this year is the Best Supporting Actor nominee, Sylvester Stallone, reprising his best-known role as Rocky Balboa in Creed. The Oscar winners will be announced on February 28th. And finally, one of the critically acclaimed actors of a generation, Alan Rickman, died on Thursday. He was 69 years old and had been suffering from cancer. Son of an Irish Catholic factory worker, the classical Shakespearean actor became best known for his movie roles, first opposite Bruce Willis as the scheming, diabolical villain Hans Gruber in Die Hard, and then years later as the complex and guarded Professor Snape in the Harry Potter series. Theater fans probably remember him best for his searing performance as Valmont in the Royal Shakespeare Company's production of Les Liaisons Dangereuses. He was great on screen and exceptional on stage. Friends and colleagues remember Rickman not only for his acting genius, but as a warm, kind, and thoughtful gentleman. And we don't have many of those. May Alan Rickman rest in peace.